Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the University's 2021 annual meeting, which will be followed by the 314th Statutory Meeting of the General Council. My name's Tracey Slaven. I'm Secretary to the University and Chief Operating Officer. I joined the University in January this year, and so this is my first annual meeting at Aberdeen, but I'm probably not the first to be having this meeting this year. I hope the meeting will give us a collective chance to reflect on the past year, which has been slightly unusual to say the least, and to celebrate some of the achievements across the very large university family that we share. So we're very pleased to see you all, whether you're alumni, students, staff or friends of the university, and I'm very grateful to you all for your participation and engagement tonight. The meeting today is being held on the Teams Live platform. This gives you the opportunity to ask questions of our speakers, and we've made time on the agenda after the presentations for you to do that. Please post in the chat function and we will pick the questions up from there. I should also confirm that the meeting's being recorded and the video will be posted on our website for those members of the university family who haven't been able to join us today. I'd now like to confirm our speakers for the evening. We firstly have Professor George Boyne, our Principal and Vice Chancellor, who will provide the annual review. David Beattie, our Director of Finance, will cover the financial review, and Professor Marion Campbell, our Vice Principal Research, will share the research highlights over the past year. And then we'll hand over to Duncan Macniven, who will provide an update from the General Council Business Committee. I hope that gives you a sense of the range of things we're covering this evening. But I'll step back now and hand over to our principal to take you through the annual review. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracey, and good evening and welcome to all the attendees at this event. On my screen, it's currently showing 47, and that's continuing to increase. So thanks for taking the time to spend part of the evening with us to hear about what's been happening in the university and the progress we've made despite the enormously difficult set of global circumstances as we've navigated through the last year in the midst of the pandemic. I'm going to talk about three things. First of all, to remind you about the university's Aberdeen 2040 strategy and the main components of that strategy, which we launched on our Founders Day in February last year on the 525th anniversary of the foundation of the university. And then I'm going to talk about the university's reputation and rankings, and then finally about our most recent staff survey, which was completed in November and gives us some good insights into morale and culture in the university community. So Ross, if we start with the first slide on Aberdeen 2040. And just thank you. So as you may recall, if you were present at the Founders Day launch of the new strategy last year, or you've had a chance to look at the strategy on the website, there are four main components which build directly on the university's 1495 foundational purpose of being open to all and dedicated to the pursuit of truth in the service of others. And these are the four headings that you see on the screen in front of you. We have 5 commitments under each of those 4 headings that we'll be aiming to achieve in the years and indeed the decades ahead, 20 in total. And we had hoped, of course, last February to begin to make progress on all 20 of them in that first year, but we focused very, very hard during the pandemic on 2 of those 20 commitments, one under inclusive and one under sustainable. And commitment 1 under the inclusive heading is to care for the welfare and well-being of our students and staff. I'll come back and say more about the welfare and well-being of our staff towards the end of this short presentation. But for now, I just want to talk about our fantastic students who have contributed enormously to the welfare of the whole institution in the last year under exceptionally difficult circumstances. Almost 2,500 of them have achieved their undergraduate degree. Almost as many have achieved a postgraduate taught degree, such as an MSc, and we have almost 600 PhD students who successfully completed their studies under these enormously difficult circumstances. So we're really proud of what the students have achieved and the amount of work they've been able to get done and the success they've had despite the constraints placed upon them by the pandemic. Much of that is, of course, due not only to their own efforts, but to the efforts of the academic staff to continue to educate them, partly online, partly on campus, under these difficult conditions. And then commitment number 20 on our list is our own financial sustainability. And I'm pleased to say that we've been able to continue to be financially sustainable, again, thanks to the efforts of the whole university community. David Beattie, our Director of Finance, will shortly be saying more about this, but this year, for the third year in a row, we'll have a small financial surplus, which puts us in a good position to recover next year. In addition to the 4 strategic themes, we have on the next slide 5 interdisciplinary challenge areas, which Ross will present now, thank you. And these are 5 topics where we believe we have distinctive expertise, and these topics also connect directly to the needs of Aberdeen and the northeast of Scotland. So both regionally and globally relevant to what the university is able to contribute. You'll see right front and centre at the top of that list, energy transition, which I think is the signature topic for the northeast of Scotland for the decades ahead. We have a long tradition of working on energy at the University of Aberdeen, traditionally oil and gas, but now renewables. And so we're setting up new research centres which will focus on these 5 areas and the connections between them. And Marion Campbell will say more about that shortly. I just want to point out at this stage, though, that all 5 of them are closely connected to each other. So we want to bring them together for joint work. For example, data and artificial intelligence feeds in to the other 4 directly. So we'll be looking in the next couple of years to co-locate these research centres in a single place on the campus to encourage and facilitate that joint working. So that's the Aberdeen 2040 strategy. We'll proceed in the years ahead with all 20 commitments and be investing in the 5 interdisciplinary challenge areas. Next, I want to move to rankings and reputation. And this summarises the progress that we've made in the last few years on our average ranking across the big 5 league tables that UK universities are ranked in. That's 3 national league tables, the Times and Sunday Times, the Guardian and the Complete, and 2 international league tables, the QS and the Times Higher. Now, I have to say that I'm a little sceptical about league tables because they fluctuate sometimes randomly from year to year. The indicators change, the weightings attached to the indicators also change in unexpected ways. And that's why we're focusing on the average across the 5, which we think gives a more accurate picture and smooths out these random variations across the tables. And you'll see that we're showing steady progress there from 31st in 2018 when the new senior team was formed and began leading the university to 25th this year. We're hoping over the next 5 years that we can make further progress on that. And by 2025, that we'll be able to get to an average ranking of 20th in the UK. That doesn't sound at face value like a big shift from 25th to 20th, but most of those universities above us in these average rankings are Russell Group. They are far bigger than we are and far better resourced. But if we focus on the things that we're especially good at and continue to provide an excellent education, then there are reasonable grounds for believing that we'll make significant progress towards an average ranking of top 20 in the years ahead. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'd come back and talk about staff morale and staff welfare and university culture. And we have some good insights into that from the results of our staff survey, which was undertaken last November. And Ross, if we move on to the next slide, what I'm going to do is just give you some of the highlights from that staff survey. All of this information is on our website. If you'd like to see more detail about all the results of the staff survey, it's all there in the public domain, completely transparently for everyone to see. The previous staff survey was undertaken in June 2018, just before I started in this role. I'm in my third year, in my fourth calendar year, how time flies. We are having an enormous fun as a senior management team in helping to lead the university. And these results show, I think, that the whole university community has moved on significantly since the summer of 2018. You'll see there that there are substantial, significant upward movements in morale amongst the university community during that time period. I'm being slightly cautious about this because, of course, as is hinted on the slide, the wording is not exactly identical in the questions that were used last November and the questions that were used in 2018. Nevertheless, there's a very significant upward movement, which goes beyond the type of movement that we would expect to see just because the wording changes slightly. And really the one that I'm most pleased about on that slide is that the university community overwhelmingly identify with the university's strategic plan, Aberdeen 2040, 91% last November, compared with only 47% back in 2018 under the previous strategic plan. Now, because I'm a methodological skeptic and you may be similarly inclined, I want to look next at questions which had identical wording in the summer of 2018 and November 2018. And you'll see a very similar pattern of an uplift in the level of morale in the university community. And just picking out one question again on this slide, I feel proud to work for the university has improved by 20 percentage points. The bottom question on that slide, from 74% to 94%. I am one of the thousands of the university community who answered yes to that question. So we've moved on significantly in our culture and morale since 2018. What I'm going to look at next is how the university ranks relative to other universities in the UK in this regard. We used an outside company to undertake the survey, and this same company does the same work, runs the same survey with 18 other universities in the UK. And this slide shows how our results compare with the average for those other 18 universities. And you'll see that by and large, we're significantly above the average on almost all of these questions. And the final one, the employer of choice score, is the one that I want to finish on. This shows the average for all the questions in the survey. The mean 3.32, our score 3.61, the very top score for all of the institutions that use this survey, and they range from Russell Group to specialist institutions, so it's a good sample across the sector, across the UK. The very top score was 3.62. We've missed out on matching that just by a smidgen. The thing that matters to me is that we're near the top of that list. We don't have to be at the very top by a factor of just 0.01 on a score like this, but it's great to be in that very top group. So you'll see from that, I hope, that we're in a good position to get back to achieving all 20 of the commitments in Aberdeen 2040. The university community is in good shape with high morale, a strong culture. We're well placed to achieve those commitments. We also, of course, have to be well placed financially in order to be able to invest appropriately in these commitments and the activities needed to achieve them. And that's what David Beattie is coming on to next, our Director of Finance. David.
Thank you, George, and good evening to everybody. If you'll bear with me for a second, I will share my screen with a short presentation for you. Hopefully everybody can see that on the screen. Yes, as George says, just want to present the accounts for our last financial year. We normally have hard copies of accounts for the annual meeting. I think Nicole is going to post in the chat a link to the accounts if you haven't had a chance to look at them. And I will happy answer any questions after the presentations are complete. Also happy to say we've got a clean audit certificate for the accounts, and those have been approved by court. So moving on to the income for the university for 2019-20, income just under £234 million, and you can see in the pie chart there the split of the income. The majority, or the largest source of income, is our funding council grants, which comes from the Scottish Funding Council via the government. We also earn a significant amount of money from tuition fee income, just under £73 million, and that's from fees from our home students and international students. Around £49 million last year from research grants and contracts, and our other income is £34.6 million, and that compromises things like residences, catering, conferences, CPD, etc. that we run. So overall for 1920, income of £234 million. In terms of the expenditure side, not a surprise, the vast majority of our costs are staffing costs, £143 million of staff costs. We spent about £61 million in operating costs, and that's a whole range of categories of spend, from utilities to maintenance to cleaning to travel to all sorts of things that are covered in the professional services and in the schools. And the final category within there is our depreciation of our assets and our finance costs on our loans and leases. And that gives us expenditure for the year of £228 million. Just really wanted to touch upon the impact of COVID. I guess it's just a little over a year ago that we all vacated the university in terms of staff and working from home. The students took to online learning. And I think very early in the pandemic, we understood that we had to take some fairly strict measures, and that really was to preserve cash within the university. So in March last year, we took some fairly key steps. We authorised essential expenditure only. We paused the vast majority of our capital expenditure, except in the Science Teaching Hub, where we felt construction needed to commence because we were about halfway through that project, and we commenced some digital projects which were really important for us in terms of our infrastructure. We utilised the government's furlough scheme. A number of staff, primarily in catering and cleaning, and some of the research posts, which were able to utilise the furlough scheme. In terms of our tuition fee income, that really wasn't materially impacted. We had a very successful September and January intake, so most of the students were actually here for the year. So while we had a little number of students who didn't appear, tuition fee income really wasn't materially impacted by the pandemic in last year. We did, though, have some loss of income from our residences and catering functions. Catering was effectively closed down from March, and residences were similarly closed with refunds to students. And as I say, our overall aim was to preserve cash, and I'll show you a chart at the end of the presentation on how our cash position has moved. I think when we look at the overall performance, in terms of the way the accounts are presented, it is very difficult sometimes to extract really what is happening, and that is because of the way that we have to treat our pensions within the university and the way we account for them. You can see in the two lines in purple here on the screen that what we have to do is account for changes and movements in our pension deficits. So, for example, in the second line there, we're a member of the USS pension scheme, and in 2019, the deficit in that scheme worsened by £43.8 million, and we had to reflect that in our accounts. I think of those years at the meeting last year, I did say this would fluctuate, and this year it has fluctuated. This year that has improved by £27.7 million, and will continue to fluctuate when we move into 2021. So that makes the accounts really difficult to read. So when you actually look at the accounts and look at the bottom line, last year we had a bottom line deficit of £54 million. This year we have a bottom line surplus of £19 million. As I say, that is very difficult to read and interpret. So what we try and do is focus on the underlying performance of the university. So what we do is take the deficit before other gains and losses and try and extract all the one-off things that are happening within the university to arrive what we call the underlying surplus. And for this year, very pleased to note that we have an underlying surplus of £6.5 million, and that was compared to £600,000 in last year. And that is largely because of the steps we took to preserve cash and go with essential expenditure only. And when we compare the underlying performance across the last 5 or 6 years, if we go back to say 2018, we had a deficit of nearly £4 million, returning to a small surplus last year, and that the £6.5 million surplus in 2020. So we can see the university is on the right trajectory, albeit I think the 2020 is probably a little bit overstated because of the way that we essentially tried to preserve cash within the organisation. Then move on to the university's balance sheet. You can see from 1819 to 1920 that the net assets of the university have increased from £336 million to £355 million. That is in part due to the movement on the pension provisions, which have decreased. So you can see the provisions line there decreasing from £97 million to £82 million, and also reflect the fact we made a small surplus within the year. The other major change within the balance sheet is if you look at the top two lines, the non-current assets and the current assets, you can see a move between those lines. That is money that we effectively borrowed in 1819. It was held as a non-current asset, could be invested it for some time. We've now drawn down that money and it's held as a current asset because we're going to use that money to refurbish key areas around King's and the new business school. So that part of that money is now held as a current asset, and that's why you can see the current assets moving from 61 million to 125 million pounds. I mentioned cash earlier on, and cash is really important at this point in time in terms of the pandemic. Having a good, strong cash balance is really important for the university. And I've mapped out in this slide how the cash balance has moved from 2016 up to 2020. And really pleased to note that we are at our highest operating cash balance that we've been for some time in terms of £43.5 million. And that does two things. It gives us resilience against future cash losses, and also gives us the scope to continue to invest in our people and in our estate. Finally, for myself, in terms of 2021, it's been a pretty difficult year, I think, for universities and the sector in general. We have been lucky enough to have had significant support from the Scottish Funding Council, something of the order of £10 million we've had from the SFC this year to support our activities. Very, very, very grateful to the Development Trust. They have been fantastic in supporting the university, and they've been able to provide some funding to support some key strategic and research posts for us. So a big thank you to the Development Trust. Our fee income has increased. We were worried at the start of the year that students wouldn't come to the university, they might defer or go elsewhere, but our fee income has increased, but that increase is lower than we'd anticipated in a normal year. But we are pleased to say that the income is up this year, but that is offset against shortfalls in residence and catering. Our catering function hasn't been able to open all year, and we've got a much reduced number of students in our residences than we'd expect. As George has said, we aim to break even or have a small surplus in this financial year. So I'm going to end now, if that's okay, and I'm going to pass on to Marion, who is going to take us through some aspects of research.
Thank you, David. That was great. So I'll now try and share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can see that, and I'll go on to the presenter mode. So hopefully you'll see that. So I'm delighted to be here tonight to speak to you. And given the hard year we've had in terms of COVID and working, highlights that we've had over the last year. So let's talk a little bit about how we've acted. Aberdeen, talk a little bit about how we've responded to the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of talk a little bit about our future directions. We signpost some major upcoming to look out for over the next year in terms of research. So George mentioned the launch of Aberdeen 2040 earlier, interdisciplinary research and indeed education. And he also mentioned the 5 main areas that we're focusing on: development and biodiversity, health, nutrition and well-being, data and artificial intelligence, social inclusion and cultural diversity. And for us at university, it's really exciting and ideal for us to be really thinking about how can we innovate by getting different disciplines to think together to address these really major societal issues that are at the core of our global challenges. And we have made progress despite the fact that for the last year we've appointed interim directors. So here are our 5 directors. We've got John Boyne, leading on social inclusion and cultural diversity. We've got Macniven on health, nutrition and well-being. Georgios Leontides, leading on data and AI. Tavis Potts on energy transition, and David Burslem on environment and biodiversity. And what we've found already is, even in the very short time that they've been appointed, they have really boosted momentum, really championing how the different schools can work together to come up with innovative solutions and innovative grant applications that we've been putting in to take forward new thinking research. And I thought I'd maybe spend a couple of minutes talking about one of them. So George also mentioned that energy transition is really the subject of the moment for us here in Aberdeen, but also for us globally through the desire to go to net zero. And so we have, as part of the interdisciplinary challenges, set up a Centre for Energy Transition. So I mentioned Tavis is leading that. But already we've seen what an impact setting up a cohesive and coherent research strategy can do. So they've only really been in existence 9 months or so, but already they've written reports for government around green recovery and around just transition. They've set up a major seminar series, getting external and internal researchers together to talk about core issues going forwards. And they've also put together really exciting international collaborations to think about how we can globally take forward energy transition research. So we've got growing relationships with Curtin in Australia and in many of the energy cities around the world. So we're seeing this as the blueprint for all our interdisciplinary challenges going forward, where coming together we can make a real impact on these societal challenges moving forward. So the big issue for us over the last year was COVID, and we decided, as many other universities, that we would use our research strength to really target the pandemic and responses to the pandemic. And so right from the get-go, we were really agile, putting together ways in which our research could help with the pandemic. And we were awarded one of the largest portfolios of funded COVID-19 research in Scotland. Right at the start of the pandemic, we got over £1 million to help us focus on getting research solutions to the pandemic. And we've led research on how to help healthcare practitioners deal with stress. We've investigated what it's been like to be shielded and how the NHS services can respond to their health needs. We've also developed, and it's in testing now, a new COVID-19 antibody test. We developed that internally, and it's now being developed by a commercial partner. We also really thought out of the box, and one of our new groups, we will talk about later, our Planetary Sciences group, used their expertise in developing technology, and they actually developed a new low-cost ventilator using all their skills. They have now delivered this ventilator, which is being evaluated in Rwanda, and it's particular attractiveness is that they use, the particular way they've developed this ventilator is it uses off-the-shelf components, which means it's very cheap to run, but it's very effective. So again, we repurposed our research skill to really address the societal needs. I guess coming closer to home, if any of you have been to the dentist since COVID has started, that's also down to the work, the research led by Aberdeen and also colleagues in Dundee. So it was actually the results of their research that informed the Scottish Government on how to open dental services safely, how they could manage the aerosol generating procedures, and indeed all the guidance that was produced by the Aberdeen researchers have now been picked up by the WHO and used to recommend how to manage dental services around the globe now. So that was COVID, but in the middle of it all, our standard research is still ongoing, and some really exceptional work has been carried out over the last year. And I thought I'd just highlight this one, which is very Scottish and local. So Professor Gordon Noble, one of our archaeology professors, has been leading really groundbreaking work trying to shed light on our Pictish past. And his work has been acknowledged to have radically altered how we understand the Picts, to have been as a nation effectively. And so Gordon's work got Current Archaeology's Research Project of the Year. And that's really one of the most prestigious awards that you can possibly get in the field. So again, really encouraging work. And he's used innovative digital recreations of Pictish settlements, and you'll see in that photo on my slide, they managed to reconstruct how Picts would have lived here in the northeast, and some really innovative work coming out of that too. We've also got new research groups working together in the university. If you remember from last year, George was identifying the strategic investments that we were putting in place to develop our research, and we've got new researchers in energy transition, which I mentioned earlier. But I thought, I would also speak about our new research group in planetary science. So if any of you have been watching the news, you cannot have missed the Mars mission that's ongoing at the moment. And actually, our new research group is for the next Mars mission. They will have equipment on the remote vehicle that goes up to Mars in the next, I think, 18 months. They're expert in remote sensing about measuring atmospheric pressure and atmospheric measurements. And luckily for us, though, it's also transferable onto Earth. So they're using all their skills as well in terrestrial science, and particularly championing interdisciplinary research around space law, working with engineering, about technological development. So really exciting work coming up in the next year. And I thought I'd just finish with a couple of slides, just flags for you to look out for over the next year. Some of you may remember that a couple of years ago we were awarded, as part of Aberdeen's City Region deal, really significant amounts of money for development. And one of the core developments was to develop what's called a Biohub. So this is very much, we've got excellent strengths here in the Northeast in life sciences and drug development, in many aspects around biodiversity and life sciences. And one of the key developments is to build a flagship Biohub up in Forster Hill site. We develop bespoke labs for businesses to work with researchers that will allow spin-out companies to work very closely with their academics. And this is the plan for the future. We as academics and researchers will be working with business, working with our local partners, to work together to develop innovation and to really champion the innovation that's here in the Northeast. So watch out for this one. Biohub is on its way. And then I just wanted to finish off with the worldwide agenda. all of you will be aware, COP26, the Global Climate Change Conference, is here in Glasgow this year. And to reassure, we're at the forefront of this as well. Pete Smith, one of our leading researchers in sustainability, is leading the UK universities agenda on how we influence the sustainability agenda. He's directing a lot of the work that's going to be discussed at COP26. So really, we're at the table, we're influencing this agenda going forward and looking forward to really changing the world with some of the research that we have lined up over the future. So please come back next year and find out more. But I'll stop there and I'll hand over to Duncan Macniven now to talk about the more formal agenda moving forwards. Thank you for that.
Thanks very much, Marion. I chair the Business Committee of the General Council, which acts for the General Council, which is an impossibly large body of 100,000 people or something. The Business Committee is elected by the General Council and acts for it between meetings. And I'll talk a little about what we've been active on in the 6 months or so since the last meeting of the General Council in August. The Business Committee has met 3 times, as we normally do in between General Council meetings, and we've been meeting virtually, which is a little less good than meeting face to face. Of course, our work has been particularly affected in other ways by the coronavirus, and we've been supportive of the university's efforts to keep us close to normality for its students and staff throughout the pandemic. We've been particularly concerned about the effect of the coronavirus countermeasures on the student population, and we were absolutely delighted to support the university's COVID-19 bursary fund, and delighted also that it quickly exceeded its £150,000 target for donations. It's a tribute, I think, to how much the alumni community cares for and the students of today, and how much the students of today matter to people like me, who are the students of yesterday, or in my case, perhaps the day before yesterday. Other topics that we were working on. The university has 2 parts. One of it is Marshall College and the other is King's College, and the Marshall College building still survives, largely occupied by the local authority, by Aberdeen Council now. But the university retains quite a large component of the building, and we've been deeply involved over a number of years in trying to find ways that better use can be made of these important buildings, which have important contents, including a very high quality museum. We've got 2 of the members of the Business Committee on a university working party, a short life working group, which is seeing whether something better can be done with Marshall College just now. It's the eastern part is very much underused. So that's one of the topics we were involved in. George has already touched on the second topic, which is the progress of the Aberdeen 2040 strategic plan, the progress with implementation. We were involved in the putting together of the strategic plan and are extremely supportive of its content. And we've been keeping in touch with the way that implementation has been going, handicapped again, as George explained, by the coronavirus problem, but we look forward to continued progress in the years ahead. We've been supportive too of the work that alumni relations have been doing to keep in better touch with the alumni community, with the General Council essentially, and to run such a marvellous programme of events. And Nicole, who's our hostess today, has been masterminding that with her colleagues. I attended a few. Particularly excellent was the Burns Supper, the virtual Burns Supper, an outstanding event attended by an unimaginably large number of people. But I've also been to other things, varying from the archaeology of the Silk Road to a tour of the Cruikshank Botanic Gardens in Aberdeen when it was covered with snow. I look forward to a non-snow covered spring event, I think later this week. But congratulations to the alumni team, and we strongly support the action that you've been taking. We've been trying to increase the engagement of General Council members in the work of the Business Committee, encouraging people to come forward with topics for us to discuss, and one of them we'll be discussing at the General Council meeting which follows this university annual meeting. And I would also encourage people to become members of the Business Committee. Nicole will no doubt share a link, I think perhaps during the General Council meeting, on how to put your name forward. It's not a difficult affair, and the Business Committee is a purposeful and informal body of enthusiasts that would be keen to welcome people from across the spectrum of General Council members. We've been working away for a number of years about the change in the way that the court appoints members, that members of the court, which is the senior governing body of the university, are appointed. Formerly, the General Council elected 4 members of court, and that process was ended in 2017, although the 4 sitting General Council members were appointed separately as independent members of court for a period. That period is now coming to an end, and we've been trying to find ways of drawing closer together the court and the General Council. A process which has resulted, however, in the loss of direct elections by the General Council of court members. There will remain a number of independent members of the court from the General Council, who are from the General Council, but no longer elected by the General Council, which the Business Committee deplores. We understand the reasons for it. It allows the court to control more closely the balance of its own membership, but it reduces the impact that the General Council has on the deliberations of court. Lastly, we've been fostering work that Dr. Charles Calder has been doing on the history of the General Council, essentially the history of the whole university, in the period since 1960, a successor volume to work that was published taking the story up to 1960 by Louise Donald. And I hope that by the time of the next General Council meeting, I'll be able to set a publication date. The work of Charles Calder is nearly complete. I would like to thank members of the Business Committee for their work, diverse work in support of the General Council and thus of the university, particularly Mel Roberts, who's been the vice convener of the General Council, of the Business Committee in my time as convener, and has given able support. Mel, she has served too many terms on the Business Committee to allow her to be re-elected. So we say farewell, or perhaps see you soon, to Mel this autumn, and to 3 other members of the General Council of the Business Committee who've given sterling service over the years. And as I said earlier, I would encourage new members of the General Council to put themselves forward for election to the Business Committee. It is fun, or at least I found it fun in my time as chair. Lastly, can I give a puff to another of the things that the that the General Council members have been involved in over the year, which is the Student Show, which celebrates its 100th anniversary this year. And there is an exhibition launched on the 29th called A Rare Nicht Uit, which I'm sure will be as enjoyable as the many, many student shows that the General Council members of the past have been involved in. So thanks very much for listening. I think I'm now passing to Nicole, who's going to manage the Q&A session that follows this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Duncan. Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Cochrane. I work in the Alumni Relations team at the university, so I'm going to be moderating the Q&A. So we're now taking questions from everyone on any of the topics that's been discussed so far, or anything else that you'd be wanting to ask. Please feel free to use the Q&A function if you haven't opened that yet. You'll see that it's two little speech bubbles with a question mark in them, and you just click on there and you can type in your question and we'll get to that. We do have one question that's been submitted so far, so I will read this out for you, George, and then you can see who's best placed to answer. So the question is it possible to share at a high level, if not now in the future, key benchmark comparisons such as income and alumni income and expenses for the University of Aberdeen against those in the top 20 ranked universities, recognising our wish to be in the top 20 ranking?
Thanks, Nicole. I'm going to pass that one across to David.
Yes, thanks, George. Yes, yeah, we can do that. We regularly benchmark ourselves against a number of institutions, and we can get that information from the annual accounts and from our HESA returns. So yes, we'll happily provide some information for future meetings, if that's okay.
Super, thank you very much, David. We've no other questions currently, which I think has never happened to me before in a meeting. There's usually quite a lot of questions, but it's maybe just a sign of how well you guys covered all the topics we've had so far. So I'll give you guys another minute or so. If you can think of anything that you'd like to ask our panel of speakers, you'd be very welcome to do so now. While we're just giving people another moment, I will share a link with you about the student show kickoff that Duncan mentioned there. You'll be very welcome to sign up and join us for that. That's next Thursday evening.
May I ask a question? Is it proper for me to ask a question?
Of course, please do. Yeah. Go for it, Duncan.
I'll keep the show going for the moment, because we've heard about the finance and we've heard about research, and these are two clearly very important aspects of the university work, but the other element is teaching. And I wonder whether George could say a word or two about the extent to which people have continued to receive in-person teaching, and what happens when that, for many students, is impracticable because of the COVID restrictions.
Thanks, Duncan. That's a really interesting question. For much of the year, our students have been learning online. In the period before Christmas, so in the first half session, we were allowed to have 20% of our students on campus at any one time. So their face-to-face learning has been really quite severely restricted by the pandemic, and of course the regulations that the Scottish Government has put in place to try to protect us all while the pandemic was raging. We are hoping in the next academic year to have far more students on campus with us and being educated in the conventional way. We know from student surveys globally and in the UK that the very strong preference of students is to be on campus with an enhanced online component of their education, now that they've become more accustomed to being educated online as well as face-to-face. But really the strongest preference by far is to be educated on campus so that they get the educational benefits, the developmental benefits of mixing, in our case, of course, with students from 120 different countries, and the social benefits of being in Aberdeen, which is also, of course, very valuable for the North East economy, that we have students with us here from all parts of the world visiting, their parents visit, their friends visit, and they're busy spending money in our shops, in our hotels and our pubs, and helping to grow the economy as well as grow the university. So all of that is beneficial, and we hope to be back to that in the autumn.
Super, thank you very much. So we have had some questions come in there. So the next question is, what steps is the university taking to mitigate pre-cognitive bias in the development of new artificial intelligence programmes?
Well, that's certainly a question for Marion.
Why, thank you, George. I thought that would come my way. This is well out of my comfort zone. I'm sure if you're interested in finding out, I can go and find out and send an answer back through Nicole, but that's way out of my expertise.
Thank you, Marion. I will. I'll put the alumni email address into the chat there as well. So if anyone has any questions they want to follow up with afterwards, you're more than welcome to send them that way, and we'll get them passed along. The next question is, how will the University Court ensure that it takes into account the experiences and expertise of its graduates if the link between the Business Committee of the General Council and the University Court is eroded?
Thanks, another really good question, and Tracey is already anticipating that this question is going in your direction, Tracey.
Thank you, George, and thank you for the question. Court absolutely recognises the importance of input from our alumni community. What Duncan was outlining was some changes in response to the 2016 Governance Act, which we implemented across the composition of Court. So while there are no longer any directly elected General Council members on Court, we do recruit a significant number of independent governors onto Court, and at least 4 of those have to be members of General Council. It's just they're not specifically designated seats. So we're in the process actually of recruiting independent governors as it stands at the moment, and while we're midst process and I can't share a huge amount of information, what I can say is I've been incredibly pleased by the feedback and the engagement of alumni in that process, and we've had a really diverse and positive response to that recruitment. So I expect to see continuing engagement between the General Council as an important part of our governance structure with Court, and those views being reflected there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracey, for that. The next question is, in George's last slide, he mentioned that there was one key indicator where Aberdeen fared worse than the average, and she said, I am paraphrasing. Can you say a little more about that?
Yes, well done for spotting that, and it's a really good question. The one indicator where we fared worse than the comparator group was in the completion of annual reviews for staff. And we deliberately paused those during the pandemic in order to lighten the workload. And our colleagues will step up the annual reviews again in the next academic year. So we didn't set out to be worse than the other universities in the comparator group, but I think the staff community would thank us for having taken the foot off that pedal while the pandemic was ongoing. And as I say, we'll get back to it next year.
That's great, thank you very much. The next question is, has the university lost income from the government's reduction in official development assistance funding?
Yes, it has, and Marion will say more about that.
Yes, thanks, George. Yes, the university has lost money in this income. And I think we were as surprised as the rest of the community by this announcement. What we have been doing is we set up a task force to help mitigate those grant holders that were affected by this. And we also had some other monies from Scottish Funding Council that we managed to ameliorate some of the impact of this. So it's still a live issue that we're working with in some cases still UKRI, the funding agency. But yes, it's the bottom line. We have lost funds, but we're desperately trying to make sure that we can deliver as much as possible of our portfolio as we can.
Great, thank you very much. The next question is, we have made a very promising introduction to the Doha campus. So are there any other target locations internationally that UOA would wish to have similar cooperations?
That's another really good strategic question. For the foreseeable future, we'll be focusing really hard on the Doha campus. That's a very big undertaking for us, for ourselves and our partner, AFG College, and we want to make sure that we have that absolutely right before we consider another undertaking on a similar scale anywhere else in the world. So for the next 5 years or so, we'll be focusing on Doha only as the major international campus.
Thank you very much. The next question is, on the topic of continued blended teaching, what measures have been put in place to support teaching cohorts in the additional work? I'm
sorry, I'm not quite sure I understood the question, Nicole.
No problem. Just thinking the topic of continued blended teaching, what measures have been put in place to support the different teaching areas, I suppose?
Certainly support has gone in for both students and staff to help them cope digitally with the altered learning environment, and we've invested in that. We've trained our staff, we've supported our students, both in the digital learning and in the assessment arrangements. So we have comprehensive measures in place to protect our students from disadvantage in the context of COVID. So I think both the students and the staff have been supported to get through this.
Great, thank you very much. The next question is, we have enjoyed some of the highest percentages of EU students attending UK universities in recent years. What has been the impact of Brexit on European students coming to Aberdeen?
So it's a little early to tell, but predictably and regrettably, application numbers are significantly down on the same point last year. For our EU undergraduate applications, we're running at only about 50% of the level that we had in previous years. Now that's unsurprising because the Scottish Government was paying the fees of our EU undergraduates, and now the EU undergraduates themselves have to pick up the cost of studying in Scotland. We're pleased actually in that context when the price has gone from zero to international fees with a discount as a result of scholarships that we've introduced, that demand is holding up as well as it is. I think that shows the level of interest and indeed affection for Aberdeen amongst our EU undergraduate community. There is an upside to this, which I think some people will be pleased to hear. We are hoping that the places that were previously allocated by the Scottish Government to EU undergraduates will now be available to Scottish undergraduates. So our hope is this autumn we'll be able to recruit more Scottish students and retain at least 50% of the EU undergraduates that we had previously.
Thank you very much. The next question is, what will be the future for digital in the new normal of teaching?
An enhanced future for digital, for sure. A much stronger component of all our degree programs. That's for the on-campus students. I also expect we'll see more online degree provision only. There are some subjects, some specialisms that work well on an online basis. There are others, such as the lab-based subjects, which really require an on-campus experience. So definitely an enhanced future for digital, and provided our finances turn out in the way that David has described, we're getting ready to invest in the digital part of our infrastructure.
Thank you very much. The next question is, when will the university have some idea of student numbers registering for the next session?
That's another very good question, an important strategic issue for us. We get indications all year long of applications, but with the international students in particular, we're never really sure how many we'll have until the registration date has passed. So the numbers for Scottish and UK undergraduate applications are known well in advance, but it's much later in the cycle before we know the numbers for international students. At the moment, our international numbers are not quite running at the level that they were before the pandemic, but we think students are being more cautious this year, waiting to see how the situation develops, and are more likely to apply later in the cycle. And the better progress we make here with vaccination and suppression of the virus, the more likely it is that students will come to the UK.
Great, thank you very much. And this appears to be the last question, so if anyone's got anything else they want to add, then please feel free to do so now. Many universities seem to be struggling with what is known as cancel culture. Does Aberdeen have a specific policy here, and if so, what is it?
I'm going to pass that question to Tracey.
Thank you. So for those, I'm hoping my mic's unmuted. My system's telling me I'm both muted and unmuted simultaneously, so that's fantastic. Thank you for everybody who put thumbs up. So cancel culture, for those who aren't familiar with the term, is a form of ostracizing, where individuals are excluded from a group, whether it's online or in another form. In terms of formal policies, it's not something that we have a very specific policy on. What I would say, however, is that cancel culture is absolutely the opposite of everything that we're trying to do in terms of inclusion, in terms of equalities work, and in terms of increasing diversity. The Aberdeen family is a tight one, and that's something where we are working together to make sure that inclusion is the outcome rather than cancel culture. So I don't think we have the same problem that you're articulating in the question, and I certainly don't think we have a need for a specific policy on that as it stands at the moment.
Thanks, Tracey, and I'll just add a few extra comments to that. As Tracey has said, we don't have a policy, so you may wish to interpret this as a personal position rather than a university position, but in addition to being at odds with our culture of inclusiveness and diversity, cancel culture is at odds with freedom of expression, freedom of debate, intellectual exchange, and the deconstruction of arguments on the basis of logic and evidence, rather than refusing to listen to an argument simply because we disagree with it. In fact, I think it's especially important that we listen to arguments that we disagree with so that we're able to unpick them and find out whether there's any logic or evidence to support them.
And we've had just one more come in, sneak in at the end there. Many international students in the UK are frustrated with the pandemic and the effect on in-person learning, which has impacted hugely on prospective students. As a university, what measures can we put in place to attract international students?
I think our best route to this is to ensure that we are open in the autumn for students to be on campus and to get back to the type of education that we have conventionally provided here to a very high standard. We need the cooperation of the vaccines and the virus and our governments in order to be able to achieve that position. But everything is looking positive for providing a traditional on-campus educational experience with enhanced online learning alongside it. So I think that's the best step we can take in order to continue to be attractive to international students.
That's great, thank you very much. And that seems to be it for the Q&A now. So thank you very much, everybody, for your questions. If you do think of anything that you would like more information on, or you would like followed up, then you are more than welcome to reach out to us in the alumni team. I have put our email in there, and I will put it in again just so you guys have a note of it, and you're more than welcome to reach out to us. So I will hand over now to Duncan, who's going to do the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Good, thanks very much, Nicole. I sit in an interesting position. I'm not involved at all in the running of the university. I care deeply about it, but I'm not part of the governance of the university in any large way. So I can look from the outside and give a vote of thanks to the whole university community, represented today by George, David, Marion and Tracey, for the work that they've done over the past year, which is reported in cold print in the annual report, but has been put out with a bit more passion this afternoon. It's been a difficult time for education. It's been a particularly difficult time for higher education, with so many of the client group, as George was explaining, substantially absent during the year. And I think that the leadership of Aberdeen has done a great job in overcoming these obstacles. And it was great to see in the annual report a special vote of thanks to the security, portering and building staff of the university. This isn't just something for the academic members of the university community. It's something that the whole university has been involved in, and I, as a caring outside observer, have been really impressed with the achievement during the difficult circumstances of the year. As regards this meeting, it's been a different experience, unfortunately, from meeting in King's, but in one respect a better, because I would like to give a vote of thanks to the questioners who've put forward a probably more diverse range of questions than we would get in King's Conference Centre, and that's also all to the good. So many thanks to the questioners for their participation, and to the attendees who have been silent. We're running at 60 just now, we've been up to 68. It's more than we would have got probably in a real situation, which I do hope we can get back to next year. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Tracey is going to formally close the meeting, I think.
Thank you, Duncan, and thank you for that vote of thanks. And on that note, yes, we should formally close the annual meeting of the university. And Duncan, having had chance for a very short breath, we will hand back over for the 314th statutory meeting of the General Council. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Tracey. There'll be a certain amount of shuffling of feet and moving of chairs as some people leave. Not everyone who was at the university annual meeting is a member of the General Council, but those of you that are staying on, I look forward to your participation in the same active way as you've been doing at the university meeting. You have the agenda, I hope, in front of you in some form. I've printed it off myself, old technology, to allow me to do notes in the margin. And the first item is the minutes of the last meeting. It was only the 313th statutory meeting, and I'll perhaps, participation is a little difficult because because we're restricted to the chat in the Q&A, but I'll go through the minutes page by page quite slowly, so that if you've got your typing fingers ready and spot something that you disagree with in the minutes, you can say your piece. So page 1, which starts with the heading and the 6th of August meeting. Page 2, which starts with the subheading University Update pandemic response. Page 3, which starts with the subheading Business Committee Membership Election Update. Page 4, which starts Proposed Changes in Standing Orders. The second last page, page 5, which has the concluding bit of the discussion. And page 6 is simply a continuation of an annex. Now, I don't see, Nicole, any folk popping their heads up to say, hey, look, you got that wrong. So congratulations to the minute taker. I deduce that the meeting is happy to approve these minutes. As regards matters arising, most of the things are covered later in the agenda. There's just two things I would like to highlight. The first was new news at the time of the last meeting, which was a loss of data relating to some alumni, some personal details of some alumni, thanks to a data breach affecting a university supplier called Blackboard. The Business Committee continued to get reports on the corrective action that the university took in the wake of that very unfortunate data loss, and we noted the fact that the Information Commissioner, who polices personal data in the UK, concluded that it should take no action against the university, that there had been the university had done nothing wrong in the data loss. The university, I know, is tightening up its procedures as well as it's sensible for it to do, and we've heard reports on the nature of these tightening up. The other item, which doesn't naturally appear in the agenda, although people are of course welcome to raise it under any other business, is a worry that a member of the General Council had that the action against racism agenda, which is a very important topic, might have negative implications for the choice of the 525 alumni of achievement, which the university was seeking to identify, people over the last 525 years who've come out of the university and contributed to our nation. The follow-up to that is that a member of the business committee, in fact our vice convener Mel Roberts, has been invited to be part of the selection group for these 525 alumni of achievement, and will keep an eye open for any sign of the worries that the General Council member that raised the issue had. These are the only items that I note as arising from the minutes that won't come up naturally in the rest of the agenda. Is there anything else that we should be raising at the moment? Okay, there's always an opportunity at the end to pipe up again, and we can deal with it under matters arising. Then under any other business. The next item is for Tracey to speak to. I think it's future membership of the business committee and an update on the election arrangements. Tracey.
Thank you, Duncan. We are well and truly in election season, I think, at the moment. In the annual meeting just previously, I referred to the fact that we were recruiting independent governors at the moment, and we are also very much in the period of recruiting a new senior governor for court, and members of staff and students will be invited to take part in that election at the beginning of May. But the business on the agenda today is the membership of the Business Committee. And as required by Standing Order number 19, I am giving notice that the current terms of 7 members of the Business Committee will end at the end of September 2021. And to give you those names, the following individuals are due to retire on the 30th of September, but are eligible for re-election. That's Patricia Pugh, Mary Stephen and Mark Strange. We also have 4 individuals who are due to retire on the 30th of September 2021 and are not eligible for re-election. That's Lynn Menny, Alan Milne, Mel Roberts and Brian Wood. The process for nominating is that nomination forms will be available from Nicole Cochrane in the Alumni Relations team, and you have the period right from now until close on Monday the 21st of June at noon to make nominations. If there are more nominations received than there are vacancies, then election will be held and council will be notified accordingly. You can use the email address that is being posted in the Q&A chat to request a nomination form, or indeed the same information is also available on the website for the General Council. I would encourage, having sat in only on one meeting of the Business Committee so far, but I would encourage you to consider taking part in the Business Committee. It has a fantastic range of inputs, and indeed from the update that Duncan has given you, a really broad agenda in terms of how it inputs into the business of the university and how it makes sure we're listening to that alumni voice. So please try not to be turned off by some other elections happening elsewhere in Scotland during this period, and nominate either yourself or a colleague you think would be well placed to sit on the Business Committee. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tracey. And I promised potential members of the Business Committee that as long as I sit in the chair, meetings will not be boring, but will be fun, so far as we can manage it. We have the privilege, the advantage of being able to select our own agenda to some extent, and that means that we can identify things that are purposeful but also fun. Now, I don't suppose that fun is quite the subheading for the next item in the agenda, because we've proposed changes to the standing orders, and we don't fiddle around with the standing orders very much, but we need to at the moment. And can I invite Eric Crockert, who's a member of the Business Committee and formerly a convener of the Business Committee, and who is our guru on standing orders, to introduce the item. Eric.
Yes, I'm not quite sure why I became the guru, but anyway, I suppose it's because over the last few years we've had to sort of visit various standing orders due to changes that have been made in various areas. I know that people find the standing orders are fairly arcane, and I agree, but they are nevertheless necessary to regulate the way that we conduct these meetings. So I don't propose to go into this in very great detail. The change from 6 months to 3 months for notice of motions is really a practical measure, because particularly since we've moved the winter General Council meeting to coincide with the AGM of the university, we then realised that we were not going to meet the 6 month requirement before the next General Council meeting, and so we feel that 3 months is more reasonable. It gives us more flexibility, and it means that we wouldn't be put into a position where we might have to wait a whole year before any change to standing orders was able to be discussed. The other one is the fact that the General Council assessors, as was mentioned in the annual general meeting, were done away with in 2017, and we've been fiddling around with Standing Order 19 as a result, and this is the latest suggestion for how to try and regularise the position. We had hoped that the governance review of the university would have been completed, and I may say that while I'm recommending that we approve this change to Standing Order 19, that I would like to put down a notice that it may be necessary for us to revisit this again at the next General Council meeting, because once we know exactly how the university is proposing to specify which of the 12 independent members are the ones who have to be members of the General Council, it may be possible to tidy this one up further. But at the moment, the best that we can do is come up with the wording which you have before you. So I recommend both these changes for your consideration and approval.
Thanks very much, Eric. Now, the nature of this online meeting makes it a little difficult for us to do what we would normally do and look out around the room for people that are dissenting. So bearing in mind that this proposal has been introduced at the last General Council meeting in August, and that we've heard no opposition to it, bearing that in mind, if you disagree with it, do pipe up in the Q&A stream now. Otherwise, we'll take it that the General Council is happy to have the standing orders changed in the way that Derek's described. Okay, answer came there none. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the special subject for this meeting is proposed by an alumnus called Ben Jump. Ben and I haven't met, but we've corresponded, and Ben's corresponded with Nicole, and his interest is in finding a new name, new motto, and new emblem for the university. Now, it was too difficult. This is where we're grappling with the difficulty in an online meeting. It was too difficult for Ben to be present, as it were. So what he and I agreed was that I would introduce his paper using a PowerPoint presentation, which Nicole will be putting up on the screen in a moment. So for the next few minutes, it's not Duncan Macniven speaking through my mouth, it's Ben Jump. And this is a summary of the proposal that Ben wishes us to consider at this meeting. Now, his first slide asks why rename the university and revise the associated motto. He asks us to consider whether renaming the institution from the University of Aberdeen to Aberdeen University might be beneficial because it's easier for people to write, say, and refer to. And then turning from the name to the motto, he asks us to consider, does the university motto accurately represent the institution's current core values and stated philosophy towards inclusivity and equal accessibility? And he points out that the English motto the motto translates into English as "the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom," which sounds great in Latin, but which may be irrelevant or actively offensive in the ears of atheistic, agnostic, or non-Christian spiritualists. And he invites members to consider whether the motto is now relevant or whether a new motto might be adopted. And Ben points to the founding statement dating from Bishop Elphinstone 525 years ago, which George quoted earlier in the university meeting, open to all and dedicated to the pursuit of truth in the service of others. He feels that's an interesting alternative to consider. Then Ben's next slide turns to the coat of arms, and he asks whether a heraldic coat of arms is an appropriate or relevant emblem to represent the university and all our students today and in future years. He feels that it's not inclusively or accurately representative of all our students and employees. It's visually complex, it's not immediately easy to interpret or to recall, and could be seen as socially divisive, elitist, or exclusive. And is there a way of coming up, he asks, with a visually simple, modern, and more inclusive pictorial emblem? So in summary, what Ben is suggesting that we discuss is renaming the institution as Aberdeen University, replacing the motto Initium Sapientiae Timor Domini by a new and collaboratively created and approved motto or core value statement, and replacing the coat of arms with a visually simple, attractive and memorable pictorial emblem, more accurately conveying the character and core values and philosophy of the university today. Now, it's difficult for us today to have the debate which it would be easy to do in the King's Conference Centre. And what Ben and I agreed was a sort of two-stage process. People are welcome to comment just now, and the Q&A is open as before for any comments by those attending just now. But consider the possibility of taking these proposals forward to the next in-person meeting, when we can properly, more easily debate whether or not we agree to invite the university authorities to consider implementing these proposed changes that Ben has suggested. In the meantime, that is between the necessarily constrained discussion that we can have today and the, I hope, less constrained discussion which we can have at the next meeting, all General Council members are welcome to share their thoughts on the merits or drawbacks of Ben's proposals by emailing the address which is on the slide just now, and which is familiar to you because Nicole has typed it several times during the last hour. So that is Ben's proposal, and I welcome it because it's good to see members of the General Council making an input to the agenda. It's the sort of pick your own topic point that I was making, which increases the interest and attractiveness of the business committee discussions. So Nicole is open to new comments, of which I don't see any just now. Are there? There's a couple. Yes. Yes. Yes, and Lynn Macmillan asks, does anyone know how many applicants at the university look at the motto and the arms before submitting their application? Well, scratching my head and casting my mind back 50 years, I can't say that it was one of the things that I considered, but then I had a very odd thought process to get to Aberdeen. And I wasn't necessarily typical, but a good point. And Ian MacDonald, and yes, Ian MacDonald recommends that we play a straight bat and carry it forward for further debate at the next meeting, which I certainly think would be appropriate. And an interesting comment from an anonymous member of the General Council that it's congratulations for having had such a thoughtful comments in such a short time, should be rejected today for three reasons. The motto has only limited challenge to diversity and inclusion, and as an atheist, the anonymous contributor takes no offence. And the pun on the word Domini is an interesting one too, meaning teacher as well as God, yes. The coat of arms seems pleasant to our contributor, but absolutely rightly, the meeting, we can't take a decision on the coat of arms at a meeting like this, and nor was Ben suggesting that we should. He was suggesting a sort of design competition. And the third point is that removing the word "of" from the title is a very small change with limited benefits and cost and associated costs. Yes, we've got a few comments now. The next one by Mark Lindley Highfield. Beautiful coat of arms, really regrettable to see it changed. And yes, Mark is voting for the status quo. The University of Aberdeen implies that it's the superior one. The existing motto, yes, the coat of arms would indeed have to be changed, registered with the Lord Lion if it were changed, as the existing coat of arms was in the 19th century. The heritage of the university attracts a number of new students, a very important point. The current motto, says somebody else, has served well for 500 years. How long might the new ones last? Well, strictly the motto and the coat of arms is only about 150 years old, whereas the replacement motto that appeals to Ben is 525 years old. But the contributor suggests we shouldn't change, and Gareth Henderson says, happy with the coat of arms and name. The motto could possibly change, however, I'm not overly worried about it. Interesting. I mean, I take out of that there isn't a huge passion in those present today for any change, and some are antipathetic to change, but there is a certain willingness to consider change, particularly as Gareth Henderson says in his last comment, the motto is not perhaps very relevant now. But I think we should probably do as Bob Hutchison has suggested in his latest comment, carry it forward for fuller consideration at a time when we can debate it properly. But in the meantime, Nicole has noted the comments made. We'll take these into account, plus any other comments that people present want to make between now and the time of the next meeting. So having given the topic an airing at this meeting, and again renewed thanks to Ben Jump. It may not be something that turns everyone on. It doesn't actually turn me on, but it's a legitimate question which it's interesting to debate. Now, I've covered my agenda up with Ben's interesting papers. That's brought us to the end of the agenda, other than if anyone has other items that they want to raise. I would encourage people that want to raise items to let Nicole and I know beforehand, but there's no objection to raising an item on the day, and now is the moment if you want to do it. Otherwise, it's 3 minutes after the time we should finish. We can bring the meeting to a happy close. I don't see any other contributions. Many thanks to those that have written, in some cases with at some length and with some thought. So thank you very much for considering the paper beforehand. I very much welcome the comments. Now, the notice is hereby given that we'll have a 315th statutory meeting. Don't know where, don't know when. Don't know how anyway, we will aim at October, November, which would restore the kind of pattern of meetings that we've had in the past, and would mean that we meet again in the 6-month timescale, which has become the norm. And I very much hope that we can do it in a hybrid fashion of meeting face to face and having a proper debate on Ben Jump's proposal, for example, in King's Conference Centre, but also allowing participation from those further afield, which it's a valuable artifact of the side effect of the coronavirus pandemic, is that we've been able to include more people in this kind of meeting. So, with many thanks to Nicole, who's done the pulling of strings behind the scenes, and for, as I was saying in the university meeting, many fascinating lectures over the period of the pandemic. With many thanks to Nicole, and renewed thanks to the members of the Business Committee who are retiring after long service, whose names Tracey read out earlier. I think I should bring the meeting to a close. Only 5 minutes late. I'm sorry to have let it overrun. Goodbye.